All right, let's talk about automating, delegating, and deleting work so you can get way more done with AI agents. That's going to be the topic of the video. So let's talk about that. Where it all first starts with is actually with a key concept that comes and precedes using AI agents. Now, what that exactly is a mental model. You want to have mental models on how to use these tools because think about it. If you're about to start using a powerful system and you do not know how to orchestrate it, architect it, or command it to do some sort of tasks, achieve some sort of goals, or provide you some sort of output that is desirable, well, here's some problems you can run into. You can run into a bunch of money spent. You can run into a bunch of inefficiencies, a bunch of time spent that may have been or could have been directed way more efficiently. And at the end of the day, if you don't have like maps or proper ways how to direct these AI agents, what can happen is just a bunch of inefficiencies, loss of time, capital, and things of that nature. So when we have mental models, we have maps and frames of thinking how to orchestrate, lead, and direct AI to achieve goals that we want. Now, one of the most powerful mental models actually comes from Elon Musk, right? I mean, one of the most powerful and most well-known ones is called the algorithm. So this here is called the algorithm. And the way it first works is because, I think this is so important. Before you even start or execute or automate anything, you first want to question whether or not it even makes sense to perform the task. Because if there's so many things we can get done per day, you have to actually kind of question, do I actually have to accomplish these tasks, right? Because if I don't have to accomplish these tasks, that means I can just start deleting them and prioritizing exactly what may actually move the ball forward and help me at the end of the day achieve my goals much faster, right? Because think about it, you have a certain amount of time per day. And AI and agents, which are pretty much autonomous artificial intelligences that can call tools, execute commands, they can run in sandboxes, they can retrieve information, they can control your computer, they can retrieve certain context, right? So at the end of the day, these are agents. They can actually perform and achieve goals and tasks for you. So if you're running them inefficiently, you are just wasting time and not properly commanding them. So the very first thing that you want to start off with is actually questioning whether or not it makes sense to actually perform a task. Once you have actually questioned a set or a list of tasks, the next thing what you want to do is delete anything that doesn't make sense, okay? Because these could just be time wasters. It may not actually move the ball forward. It may not actually be a priority right now. It just may be invented work. Because if you have a bunch of time all day and you're just filling up your calendar, then this could all just be busy work, which actually doesn't get anything done. Like, you ever meet anyone or these people in your life where they just are always constantly busy and not progressing forward in any dimension of their life? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Once you have deleted a set of tasks, what you want to do next is to simplify things. Can you simplify it? Can you optimize it? Once you've simplified and optimized it, can you speed it up? Once you've speeded it up, you can automate it, okay? Now, another way to think about this is another framework that I actually didn't create a slide for, but the other framework is actually from Tim Ferriss, and he has a similar mental model for this and how to actually buy back more time and get a lot more done, right? And his framework is this. You first want to delete work. Once you delete work, you want to question, can you actually delegate it? And if you can't delegate it, then you want to automate it. And that also makes a lot of sense, right? Because it pretty much follows the same idea. Can you delete it? Can you delegate it? And then can you automate it? Never delegate anything you can delete, and never automate anything you can delegate. And I think the proper order he frames it is that first you want to delete it, then you want to automate it, and after that you want to delegate it, right? So never automate something you can delete, and never delegate something you can automate, right? Because I can save a bunch of money. Now let's start off with the first one. Question everything before actually touching it. Before you delegate anything, can you delete it, okay? Because, like I said earlier, if this is just busy work, invented work, and it could be deleted, it may not even be a priority. So what do? Delete it. Get it out of there. Now, another tip that you can use that is complementary to this process is time boxing. Because if you give yourself, kind of as I hinted earlier, but if you give yourself, say, 3 hours to work and find only the most productive and high leverage activities to put in that time box, you will prioritize the things that have and actually give you the highest ROI. Whereas, say, if you give yourself 16 hours to do the same 3 tasks, you may just invent work, you may slack off, you may not actually be as efficient as you possibly can in that time slot. And there's actually this concept in productivity called work efficiency. People are usually more work efficient when they have a time boxed range of work, how much they can actually work within, versus, say, giving 16 hours to do the same amount of work, where from that 16-hour window, they may be actually efficient 30 to 40% of the time, versus, say, in a time compressed window, they may be efficient by 90 to 100% of the time allocated to a task. So when you time box, you actually are more efficient within the smaller work hours that you've allotted to yourself to complete a task. And at the end of the day, what happens is when you ruthlessly cut everything out and you put it into this short window, only the needle moving work survives and everything else just gets cut out because it just may not be a priority right now or something that may make sense to actually do it. Now, when it comes to the next steps of like automating and delegating, there's two types of tasks that when it comes to, say, applying agents and software, AI, automations, whatever, into actually buying back time and achieving more. So usually it tends to come down to either one-off tasks or maybe every here or there, like occasional tasks, and then repeatable. Now, when it comes to actually one-off tasks, you want to delegate it. And the way I like to delegate it is with agents. And I'll show you a tool I'm using in just a moment, but you want to pretty much delegate them. And the way it happens is usually with a primary orchestrator. So when you're using any of these harnesses, whether it's like Claude Code, Grok, Open Code, or maybe say like Codex, or whatever is your poison, you can pretty much spawn subagents, or what you can do is you can have this orchestrator spawn other panes or other workspaces to execute a task. So what I mean is using tools like a multiplexer or herder or CMUX, where it can pretty much orchestrate and command other panes to perform work. So for instance, here we are in herder, and this is pretty much a multiplexer where it's pretty much a terminal tool where what you can do is you can command and use orchestrators and agents to run many tasks simultaneously. So for instance, here I have a skill already for herder where what I can do is I can command this pane to go out there and perform a bunch of research in separate panes. So I am getting a bunch of tasks and work done simultaneously for my agent, while it has a couple of sub-agents processing and running a task for me. So for instance, I'm going to prompt this thing to do some research on the latest technology and comings out of San Francisco, and we'll see what it pulls up. So here we provided the task. Let's see what it does. So here we got the first pane. Here we got some more panes. And as you can see here, that this primary pane here is orchestrating all these other ones. And of each of these, as you can see here, the agent is calling the Grok CLI, spawning the Grok CLI, and then it's going to pretty much prompt all these agents control the panes from this primary pane here. And as you can see here, it provided a prompt for each of these agents where they're all running simultaneously doing their own research. And this thing, it pretty much ran I believe it ran a command to check on the outputs for all the agents. So they'll all do their own research and then fetch it and feed it back into this primary agent here. So as you can see here, this is quite extremely powerful in terms of like what you can do and how much you can delegate from one agent itself. And this pane here is controlling pretty much all these panes here and waiting for feedback from all these panes. And this doesn't necessarily just apply to research, right? But pretty much any task you can think of and have one orchestrator run it. So that is pretty much the idea of one orchestrator and many sub-agents. One orchestrator agent, one pane controlling other panes. And whatever it is that you prompt these agents to do, it will execute and give you some sort of output. Now for tasks that are quite repeating and recurring, you definitely want to skillify it. So pretty much what that means is to create a skill for it. Because here in this case, as you remember, we prompted this agent to do specific research. But if there's a very specific way how you do research, how you search things, how you cite information, what you do with this information, you definitely want to create a skill for it. So are you exporting this to a Google Doc? Are you putting this into PowerPoint presentation? Is there a certain way you write? Is there a certain way you do copywriting? Is there a certain way that you have to inform your team members, whatever it is? So whatever that is, you want to put this all into a skill file. So next time you are prompting a primary orchestrator agent to delegate work, it outputs and creates tasks exactly how you would do it yourself. It's a very powerful concept. You can do this yourself. You can even go further and create specific specialized sub agents that can have specific skills associated anytime they are spawned. And every single time you use a skill, it pretty much compounds how much you get done in the future. Sure, over the first time you run it or so, it may not give you the best outputs because you do have to kind of refine it. You have to kind of see and get a sense for what the AI provided you as output. And over time, all you just do is small tweaks and it gives you better outputs over time. Now, the thing is, I do not think right now agents are in a place where you can fully automate a business. Now, there is a lot of talk of like AI co-founders, Thomas AI, and all these other different startups creating these cool projects where you can pretty much at some point, in theory, have a full entire company ran by an AI, right? Now, right now it's kind of like theory and still a working process by many people and individuals trying to reach towards this future. But I do not think we are still at that phase where you can have a fully autonomous business, right? You still do need some sort of orchestrators. And in this case, it's the human. You need some sort of direction to give this orchestrator or subagent to perform some sort of task, whether it's on some sort of trigger, whether it's by some sort of prompt, whatever it is. These AIs still need some sort of input or triggers to wake up and actually perform a task. That is the stage we are still in 2026. I suppose that gap is closing very, very fast. So very soon it might be a different or some sort of new technology, protocols, whatever may come out that we can command and work with these agents differently. But in the meantime, this is kind of just where we are and how you can use them most efficiently. Now, as I mentioned before, humans are still pretty much in the loop when it comes to running these tasks because these AIs aren't always going to perfectly nail one shot or zero shot some sort of task. And here's the thing, like people think AI is coming for the jobs. Sure, yeah. At some point, it probably will be able to automate a lot of work and remove people from a lot of tasks. But at the same time, this can pretty much move you towards more higher labor or higher cognitive order performance and tasks where I can actually help you focus on things that actually matter the most. Now, for simple tasks such as don't really require much human oversight, whatever, you definitely want to automate these things. Whereas say for something like you're about to deploy some sort of code into production with a bunch of users or a bunch of customers paying for your product, then it probably makes sense to have some sort of human in the loop, right? And having AI agents working side by side with people when it comes to delegating tasks, automating, and getting a bunch of work done, you are working at a total different pace. I'm talking 10 to 100x the pace. Now, when it comes to choosing ideas and tasks and work to automate, here are some approaches I like to take. Now, obviously, the type of work you want to automate here is more so that is predictable. You don't really need a human in the loop. Maybe it's like something small, such as updating a blog, producing a blog, or maybe doing outreaches, something that is automatable, or maybe there isn't really much risk to having an AI agent work on it. So for instance, what I mean by risk is, okay, I mentioned it earlier, but imagine you have 100,000 users using your product. If you ship something and let an AI fully deploy it to prod, then, there is some sort of risk where it can ship some sort of slop. It messes up a bunch of other areas of your product. And the next thing you know, you have a bunch of unhappy customers. Whereas say, if you have templates, if you have some sort of outreach process, if you have some sort of systems, CRMs, whatever connected, where these agents have their own inbox and they can just automate how much outreach you're doing per day, well, then there's low risk in that. And at the same time, you can pretty much save a bunch of money from using a lot of softwares by simply instead choosing to use AI agents. So for instance, having research run on scheduled runs, whether it is upgrading content or updating it, because your agent has access to your repo and then you can just update your code base, maybe doing outreach at scale, kind of as I just mentioned. The list is really infinite. There's many things you can automate. It's really just a limit of your imagination. So remember the three: delete, delegate, automate. I think this actually should be in the reverse order. So it should be delegate, automate, then delete, Because if you can delete something, there's no point in automating it. And if you can automate something, there's no point in delegating it, whether it's to a human or even an agent. And simply by having these mental models, using these tools, using the latest technology, whether it's these desktop apps, whether it's these terminal agents, whether it's these multiplexers, whatever it is, I think at the end of the day, the highest leverage move that you can have is mental models. And by having mental models, you can pick and choose tasks to prioritize, question, delete, automate, and delegate. At the end of the day, AI is just leverage. And when you use leverage, it can go either of two ways. Either it can go terribly wrong, or it can go absolutely right. But what precedes that is having the proper mental models and decision frameworks so you can get the most out of your time. So thanks for watching. See you in another one.